Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the February 27th special meeting tonight. Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Stroman?
Here.
Councilmember Walker? Here. Councilmember Engel?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hagan?
Here.
And Mayor Bellinger.
Here. And if you could all stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, item one, we're going to conduct interviews on the appointments of the vacant seats for the Planning Commission and the Rec Commission. I think we can probably start with the Rec Commission.
Yes, so staff did provide potential questions to ask commission applicants. Feel free to ask questions that aren't on the list, but it is suggested that you ask the same questions to all applicants. For the sake of time, it's recommended that each council member ask only one question. However, if you want to go longer and ask all the questions, that's totally up to council. And then if you guys want to decide if one person's asking all the questions or somebody wants to,
Okay.
you can discuss
We're
it
just
amongst
starting down and just
yourself,
going down the
yes.
row here and ask the questions. I'm good with that.
But we just have the one applicant for Recreation Commission.
Okay. One I'd
And I
ask
did provide you guys packets with everybody in that order that was received.
is Mr. Sanchez here in the room? If you could come up to the podium.
Good evening.
Go ahead and give us a little background, a little information you think we might want to know before we ask some questions, if you don't mind.
So my name is Kevin Sanchez. First of all, thank you for having me here tonight. Council members Engel, Hagan, Walker, Stroman, and Mayor Bellinger. I was interested in this position because I have 2 kids and I have a bunch of friends that have kids as well. And I was really interested in making sure that the kids had a lot of opportunities to excel and participate in sports. I used to be a teacher. I taught for 7 years. I'm a farmer now, so kind of the same thing, really. But there's just some things that you can't teach in school, but sports really teaches that to kids. Whether they do well in it or not, just the experience of going through sports, I think, is important. And I really had good experiences when I was young, and I wanted to make sure that my kids and the kids of Escalon had the same opportunities. And once again, thank you for having me, and I know the competition is pretty stiff for this position, so I'll try not to plead the fifth on too many of your questions, but thanks again for having me.
And as a reminder for the Recreation Commission, that was established to anybody that's within the 95320 zip code, which is the school district's boundaries. And so it is open to more than just Escalon residents. They can be an unincorporated Escalon as well.
And just for information here, this is just to finish out Councilman Walker's term, right?
Correct.
Okay. So open it up to questions. I don't know who wants to start. Do you want to throw one out there, Jeremy? If you got something?
Sure. First, thank you for applying for the position. Appreciate that. I guess my only question would be, Mr. Sanchez, do you feel that you'd be able to fulfill all of the duties of the Recreation Commission and be able to attend meetings regularly?
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the things I was interested in is, I know the time requirement isn't quite as much as you guys have to put in, but that's something that I'd be willing to fulfill, absolutely.
Appreciate that. I don't have any other questions.
Yeah, given the lack of competition, I'm pretty okay with what I see in front of me, so I'm fine.
Just a general question, looking at the recreation from your side of things, how do you see as one of the main issues that you see that needs to have the most effort put forth when you're on the commission? If you get on, what do you think are some of the major issues you think you want to address?
A couple years ago, I had heard that we weren't fielding a whole league for Babe Ruth, for example, in baseball, the way we used to when I was young, and that kind of jarred me a little bit. I was unaware that that was the case. And talking to a couple different parents who were coaching, there were some who felt a little bit hesitant, like, you know, we didn't play this sport in college. We're trying to figure this out. And one of the things that I'd be interested in looking into was, when I was a teacher, I appreciated vertical planning, where you wouldn't necessarily meet with, well, I was an English teacher. You wouldn't necessarily meet with the English teachers of your grade level, but English teachers of the grade levels above and below you, to try and help figure out what's expected of the students later on and what they've been learning before they got to you. So I'd be interested in looking into if some of the high school and El Portel coaches would be interested in helping some of the coaches that are with the younger kids.
Thanks. Walker, you got anything?
Took my question.
Sorry.
No. I don't think I have anything. Just appreciate you applying and wanting to give your time to the community of Escalon. So appreciate you being here and willing to volunteer, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanchez,
Yes.
so I agree that with your statement that Escalon has a tradition of athletic excellence in football, wrestling, and other sports. I mean, 3 high school championships in 4 years is nothing to bat an eye at. But what do you say to the families that don't believe that athletics is the #1 priority? And as a rec commission, how do you envision expanding the rec commission to non-athletic events, but keep it within the parameters of the rec commission?
So to get to the first part of your question, I don't think that there's anything particularly wrong with someone who isn't that interested in sports or excels at sports. One of my kids is very interested in trying to do well. I mean, he screws around sometimes and he ticks me off a little bit. And the other one, sports doesn't seem to be his thing at all. And it's good that he's going through sports to learn that, but I would rather him have the opportunity to go through sports and have him learn that's, this isn't my thing, really. It's not for me. There's still lessons, I think, that are important for him to learn from it, but he doesn't have to be a star baseball player or soccer player, or he doesn't ever have to win a wrestling match. He's not competing in wrestling this year because he's not ready, but he's trying it.
So, as a rec commissioner, but most importantly, first priority is always your children. How would you see expanding rec programs to incorporate different ideas that your son that isn't into sports, like a city-sponsored event that's not directly tied to sports?
City event that isn't tied to sports for the rec commission?
Correct.
I'm not sure the best way to answer that question.
I don't mean to trip you up.
No, it's fine.
So, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
My son is not athletically talented at all.
Okay.
He gets that from me. But he's not really into the sport so much as he's into performance and wants to see if there are children's programs, summer programs that he can get involved in performance or learning to play an instrument or anything like that. And
okay.
I'm thinking that in that kind of example, there may be an opportunity that we open up the horizon for the rec program to different non-athletic.
I see.
Event.
Beyond just sports.
Correct.
I see what you're saying. I like it. I think it's great. I'd be interested in hearing ideas about that. I can't say I have any experience with that, but I'd be open to it, absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Any other questions up here, folks? All right, then in that case, I'd entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve Kevin Sanchez for the open position on the rec commission.
I would second that.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
And so this, just so council is aware, this appointment will be good until November of 2024.
November of '24, okay. You'll remind us of that when we get closer for
Yes.
openings as well
Yes,
again?
we'll typically go back
Thank you.
into advertising availabilities.
Thank you.
So then we're moving on to Planning Commission. We received 6 applications for 2 seats. One of the Planning Commission seats that is available will expire in June of 2024. The other open position on the Planning Commission will expire in June of 2025. So one of them will be, roughly an 18-month position, and the other one will be 2.5 years. So those are the 2 positions.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know that we'll need to specify that if you make appointments tonight.
We're gonna make appointments tonight, we gotta specify which one we're looking to do for each candidate.
Yeah, just so I know
Deputy.
which term to assign them to.
Okay, thank you.
I think Mayor Pro Tem had a question.
Oh, I was just wondering, as far as what do you mean tonight? Are we postponing it?
No.
no.
You can, if council agrees to, you can make appointments tonight.
Oh, to
But if
kinda
you
review the
also
information,
decide you
you
want
mean?
more time, you could do it at a future meeting.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I wanted to keep that open. No pressure.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll just go down the list from the packet you gave us there.
Correct.
So-
Oh, and then also because there's 6 of them, if you want to, you can also, they can remain in the public to be interviewed, or you can have me move them into a different room if you don't want them to have the answers to those questions. It's totally up to you.
I think
I've seen it
it's-
done both ways.
I think I'm fine with having everybody out in the open here. I don't have a problem with that. Did anybody else? That's just my thoughts.
Good.
Just want to make sure as well.
All right. Well, I guess we'll get started up. First up is Scott Anderson. Good evening.
Evening.
You want to just give us a quick synopsis of why you wanted to be on the planning commission, then we'll start a few questions.
Yeah, so my name is Scott. I've been in Escalon for almost my whole entire life. I started to get into real estate a few years ago, and I own some property here in town and elsewhere. And I was actually, this position was brought to my attention a couple months ago, so I just decided to put my hat in the ring because of what I do as far as my background in real estate.
We'll follow a similar format, I guess, just start over with you, Councilman Engel, and we'll just work our way down, I guess.
Sure. Well, thanks for applying, Scott. Appreciate that. My question to you would be, do you have any current or potential conflicts that may interfere with your decision-making on the planning commission?
I do own something here in town, so I don't know how that works legally, but I would probably have to recuse myself for whatever you guys require for something like that related to the property that I do own. But I don't know the legal part of that. It's only one property here in town.
Sorry.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
What are your thoughts on residential growth in town?
I think smart, common sense approach. For example, the common sense approach part, I know what was done was legal, but the road coming here on the way to the city council from, it's too narrow. That's just one thing, not that there's anything wrong with it. I feel like it should be wider, and that's one thing as someone on the planning commission, I would want to maybe amend or figure out why developers are able to make roads that narrow where people are literally pulling over while other people are driving by, for a couple more houses. But with respect to growth, I don't think that we're on a too slow or too fast path right now. Whatever we can sustain infrastructural, growth-wise, like we have too much water coming in, that's a problem. We have too much going out, that's a problem, so on and so forth. That would be my only objection to growing.
I'm good with that.
All right. Taking on the backside of that question a little bit. looking at the commercial and industrial growth, what are your thoughts on that as well?
Look at other cities around ours, the ones with faster commercial growth and faster industrial growth. Everything else seems to thrive, income-wise and revenue-wise and general fund-wise. The more money they're bringing in on that side, the better. Maybe not so much like the office work, because that's all sort of kind of going by the wayside now, where everyone's sitting at home working in their pajamas. But like there's other stuff that can be done from, you know, a medical standpoint, or places where people have to come in to have things done, and that could be anything, you know, a body shop or whatever. You know, I'm just throwing out a couple examples.
Okay, thank you.
Hello?
What do you see are the challenges and opportunities in the city's future in the next year, as well as the next 5 to 10 years, related to the Planning Commission?
Well, I
The
think
city
like,
of Escalon in general, so just, you know, the challenges and opportunities being in the city of Escalon.
well, I think like the project that's being proposed on Highway 120, I don't see anything wrong with that, as long as we can sustain that, you know, with what is being proposed. Like, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a rail spur if we could do something like that. Like I said, I'm just throwing stuff out, you know, because that would bring in considerable tax revenue. So I'm all for that type of growth. On the residential side, if we can sustain it, how many houses can we honestly build in Escalon in a year? Honestly. I know 75, and people kind of get, you know, that's a lot. Well, we're gonna run out of space if we go any higher than that and continue, you know, we're gonna have to start annexing ground and all that sort of stuff. So the business part of growth is, I think, the best thing for any city in order to generate money.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for replying, Scott. I'm actually going to read one of our questions. Planning commissioners are often asked to weigh the interests of a property owner seeking to develop its property and the potential economic or social benefits of a development proposal with the concerns of existing nearby residents who are affected by the development proposal. Frequently, at a public hearing, you will hear testimony only from those opposed to the project. What are your thoughts on this potential conflict, and how would you respond as a planning commissioner?
Well, when you buy a house, your realtor tells you to do your due diligence before you close on the property. Inspections, finding out that you're behind an industrial lot behind your house and a McDonald's is gonna get put, you know, or whatever. If you don't do your own research and you don't do your own homework, you can't come back later on and go, well, that's not fair. Like, you had the opportunity to do everything within your power to find out what was coming down the line. Maybe it's not a McDonald's, maybe it's a tomato plant, maybe it's a, you know, a packing shed or whatever. So you have the right to find out as much information or as little information as you want.
So to piggyback on that, can you give us an example of an instance in which you had to publicly take a stand that was not widely popular?
Serving an eviction?
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions up here? Good. All right, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Next up would be Mr. Kurt Danziger.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Are we on the questions?
Go ahead and give us a little blurb on your desires to be on Planning Commission and why, and then why some questions.
Sure. I'm a past planning commissioner, was on the commission for 10 years. Was not re-upped in 2021. The positions are open now. I'm still knowledgeable and willing to serve and wanting to serve the community again. What was the other question?
Well, that was just, that was pretty much it. Councilman Engel, you want to start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Kurt. Do you have any current or potential conflicts that may interfere with your decisions on the Planning Commission?
None that I'm aware of, no.
Thank you.
What were your thoughts on residential growth?
Well, like anything that comes before the Planning Commission, I'm a proponent of the slow growth ordinance. Obviously, staff is, so you're not going to see any kind of large housing developments that don't conform to the slow growth ordinance. Currently, the city is in the MSR process to expand its sphere of influence, so there really isn't any large-scale growth available until that happens. And when I say large scale, I mean within that slow growth ability, and I think the Murphy Brother property is one everybody thinks about. So, again, proponent of slow growth. We don't need to expand. This community likes a small community. I'm in favor. That's why I moved out here. So that's my position.
Great, thanks. Same piggyback question off on your thoughts on growth for commercial and industrial for the city of Escalon.
It would be the same, again, as the MSR gets approved. Right now, we have Liberty Park. That's been contested or discussed here for the last year, different council meetings. And I think that's real good. I'm for the development of that property, but it needs to be done in such a manner that it meets the city's requirements and not its burden to the taxpayers. As was discussed by staff at the last council meeting, there's 8+ property owners out there, and that is the key out there. Those people need to come together with or without the city and decide what they want to do, and then with the city to express what they want to do with the plan. Do they want to meet the plan? Do they want to change the plan? I think that's where you need to start with that.
Thank you.
All right, so what do you see as the challenges and opportunities in the city's future in the next year, as well as the next 5 to 10 years related to the Planning Commission?
Well, the Planning Commission just receives applications. We're the precursor to things that come before the city council. So we use existing standards, municipal codes, and what have you. Challenges are just whatever that application may bring to the Planning Commission. I don't see, any difference in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for applying, Kurt. Planning commissioners are often, I have this question memorized by the time I'm done reading it to all 6 of you, but planning commissioners are often asked to weigh the interests of a property owner seeking to develop its property and the potential economic or social benefits of a development proposal with the concerns of existing nearby residents who are affected by the development proposal. Frequently, at a public hearing, you will hear testimony only from those opposed to the project. What are your thoughts on this potential conflict, and how would you respond as a planning commissioner?
Thank you. Yeah, I've been through a few of those. Swanson's, a new addition to the hardware store. Others. We're 2.02 square miles. Everybody's going to run into something. Westwood Country ran into P&L. We've got the RV storage lot that's going to be moving up against the estates. All those people came forward during Planning Commission meetings to voice their concerns. And the one thing good about the Planning Commission process is you do get your say. It does affect the outcome, generally speaking. I've gone into meetings thinking things would be going one way, and they completely turned around and went someplace else, and in a positive way. So, for example, the property over there by the estates, when the residents came forward, generally the ones that were in the front of that project were concerned that if they had too tall of RVs, that it was going to be over the height of the fence. And we took that into consideration, and with the property owner that purchased it, came to an agreement that there will only be small profile RVs that would be there that would be well below the height of the fence. So you can mitigate these things with the Planning Commission process. Nobody's ever going to be completely happy, but you've got commercial property owners that are right up against residentials, separated by masonry brick walls, and you got to take that everybody's input and make a decision.
So, and the piggyback question onto that was, give an example of an instance in which you had to publicly take a stand that was not widely popular.
Yeah, I would say there was a senior project over on Mesa and La Plaza, over there by Starbucks. There was a proposal for 9 senior units, 1 management unit. It looked like, to me, there were some challenges to that, road widths and traffic studies. But I thought overall, that was something that was in a positive nature for our senior housing. That was a 3-2 vote on the Planning Commission. I was on the tail end of that, but people spoke up. There was another issue where the community turned out they weren't all in favor that were surrounding it, but there were other people that were in favor of it, so that's the way they work.
Awesome. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate it. Next up would be Mike Dunbar. Also, a quick, brief synopsis of why you would like to be on the Planning Commission, then we'll ask some questions.
Perfect. First, my name is Mike Dunbar. I've lived in Escalon about 24 years. My kids went to high school here. We've enjoyed living in the community a great deal. And I live probably 200 yards from here, maybe 300 yards. So it would be easy for me to walk up here and attend meetings. So the reason I would like to be a part of this is I think that the city, and virtually every city in California, is facing some interesting dilemmas concerning housing right now. The state of California is requiring cities to conform to various requirements under a whole host of threats, including bypassing the city's planning rules and everything else to allow permits. They're builder instigated. So I think that it would be extremely interesting, and it might even be helpful to the community, if we can approach these kind of dilemmas and these kind of requirements in a thoughtful way that helps our city maintain not only its character, but its preferred slow growth approach to remaining the kind of community we all want to live in, and we do live in.
Thanks. Councilman Engel, you want to start us off?
Yeah, Mr. Dunbar, thank you for replying. My question is, do you have any current or potential conflicts that may interfere with your decisions on the Planning Commission?
None of which I'm aware. I own one property here. My wife owns a property that she just recently inherited in Stockton. I don't think that's in the sphere of influence, so I think I'm good.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on residential growth?
Well, residential growth is, I love the way Escalon has approached residential growth in the past. I think the 75 house limit is wonderful. I think if you look at the current housing element, which expires this year, and I would hope the Planning Commission would have some input into developing a new housing element, there's quite a bit of acreage that's been, well, I don't want to say acreage, but there's quite a few locations that have been identified where housing, especially infill housing, could be put. I believe the minimum number is about 800, and I think there are over 1,000 that's in the housing element. Now, that may have changed a little bit since the housing element was developed, but I would suggest there are probably quite a few locations still available within Escalon to be developed the way that we would like to see it developed, with specific plans and specific properties and things along those lines.
Thank you.
And piggybacking off that, as usual here, looking at the commercial and industrial side of growth, what are your thoughts and feelings on that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, looking at the zoning map, there actually appears to be ample commercial industrial opportunity, especially along McHenry Avenue. But we have another area that's been identified for commercial industrial use, and I think that's something we need to be looking at carefully, not necessarily because we don't want to encourage it, because I think we should, but to make sure that the stipulations and that we can create stipulations that they can adhere to maintain the character of our community. We've already got a cannery. It seems to be a good neighbor. I live close enough to smell the tomato sauce cooking, and makes me hungry for chicken cacciatore every year. I think we can have those kind of businesses if we can attract them, and I think they can fit in very well. And I do think there's ample space, and there's certainly ample space if you look at our sphere and you look at where we are, where the city has an opportunity to grow. And I think that we can continue to do that.
Thank you.
Hi. What do you see what do you see are the challenges and opportunities in the city's future in the next year as well as the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, one of the biggest opportunities I see is to develop a housing plan, or a housing element, as it's called, that encourages us to grow smartly, that encourages us to protect some of the unique farmlands we have around this community. There aren't many places in the world that have the agricultural opportunities that exist around Escalon. We have water, we have the dirt, we have everything. We have the soils, I should say. And it's spectacular. So we have to be careful that anything we do does not encroach on those opportunities, because that is, it remains, certainly one of our economic pillars. And so I believe that we have to be careful in that regard. I think that we do have opportunities. I don't know how easy it would be to grasp, but I think there are opportunities to revitalize our downtown area. We do have, 50 trains a day that go through our city? Thank God we got the wayside horns. I really appreciate the previous council for making sure that happened. I can sleep a little better. But I think that we do have opportunities in that area where we could encourage, through various incentives, better development of that area and other areas as well. As the only concern I have would be if we sprawl onto our roadways, if we allow development adjacent to roadways, we can create more problems with traffic and issues like that than we want to deal with. It's already difficult. When I first moved to town, I worked in Modesto for many years. And it used to be you'd pull up at the corner of McHenry and Ulray, and if you had to wait 10 seconds, you were getting irritated. Now, I've sat there for 2 or 3 minutes. In fact, on a few occasions, I tried to go down there to the Ford dealership and pull out that way, thinking it might be faster, because there's just a lot of traffic. If we allow development, for instance, in the area that was suggested probably 10 or 12, maybe 15 years ago, I'm sure. If we allow development off Ulray, for instance, on the west side of Ulray, we have to plan for that in a way that makes sure that we don't run into the kind of traffic problems that's going to make a mess of our city. Because that highway, where people do speed a little bit too much, right past the police station, by the way, that is a commuter artery, and it needs to be as open as possible. So we need to make sure that we keep that kind of street open and accessible and the traffic flowing well. Hope that answered your question.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for applying, Mr. Dunbar.
My pleasure.
So, planning commissioners are often asked to weigh the interests of a property owner seeking to develop its property and the potential economic or social benefits of a development proposal with the concerns of existing nearby residents who are affected by the development proposal. Frequently at a public hearing, you will hear testimony only from those who are opposed to the project. What are your thoughts on this potential conflict, and how would you respond as a planning commissioner?
Well, I used to love to make fun of NIMBYs in my previous life. I spent over 30 years working for the Modesto Bee. The last 10 years of that, I was an editorial writer and columnist. You can't have a thin skin when you write editorials. I've had my share of death threats, none of them credible. Just angry people wanting to make a lot of noise, and that's fine, let them make it. I think that this is something that goes with the territory. That doesn't mean you have to stand there and confront them. It means you do have to listen to them. And I think that's what most people want. They want to be heard. If you hear them out and let them know that even if you're deciding against them, you're trying to consider their point of view, I think that goes a long way to ameliorating any kind of ill will. It's not going to stop all of it, but, you know, that's why people involved in commissions and councils get paid so much money. They have to deal with that kind of thing, so.
And then the piggyback question that you kind of answered this, but give us an example of an instance in which you had to publicly take a stand that was not widely popular.
Well, at the risk of jeopardizing my appointment, I once wrote an editorial about pit bulls. I don't care for them. And my friend Dick Dawson invited me to come out to the Lions Club and speak about it. And I did. And it turned into quite a rousing discussion. And so I don't mind taking a stand. I try not to be obnoxious about it. Some people might find that I, can be a bit abrasive. I don't know. I hope not, but it's possibly true. I'm sure my kids do. But but I've had to take those kind of stands. I've had to deal. I've spoken, and I used to speak in public quite a bit, and it's not something I shy from.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your time. And then next up is Gabriela Vargas, Australia. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad for you. Evening. Quick summary of why you would like to be on the Planning Commission, and then we'll throw some questions at you.
I want to be on the Planning Commission because I think I bring a different perspective, a very diverse, out-of-the-box way of thinking. I am very creative, and I think that it can be put to use in developing our city.
Gabriela, thank you for applying. The question I have for you is, do you have any current or potential conflicts that may interfere with your decisions on the Planning Commission?
I do not.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on residential growth?
I come from a big city, so I was born and raised in San Jose. I was listening to you about waiting a few minutes, and I hear people say, we had to wait 2 minutes for the train. I find it comical because traffic in the Bay Area is nothing like waiting 2 minutes for a train. It's like a relaxing moment. What I don't want to see is I don't want to see rapid growth. I don't want to see stress on already overpopulated neighborhoods. I don't want to see just an example, there's a property across the street from my house, which is on the corner of First and James, where I believe it was the old firehouse. One building, the gentleman has purchased it and is turning it into 2 homes. The first home, plenty of space. The home that's gonna go behind it is literally 2 feet from its neighbor. I think it just shouldn't have been approved. It's crowded already. I would like to see, houses built at a slow pace. I definitely don't want to see cookie cutter houses kind of coming into our community. I like that our houses all are very original and have their own style to them. But I would like to see the houses that are coming here, people that are living here and working here, moving here, and not people that are just coming to sleep and go and spend their lives in the Bay Area.
And piggybacking off that, same question for the other folks. Your thoughts on commercial and industrial growth for our community?
So one of the areas where I think we are not succeeding is we're not thriving as a community. I believe that we need more business coming into town. I am for light industrial growth just because it brings jobs, I understand, but it brings not as much in terms of revenue to our city. I would like to see more retail, more commercial. I would like to be able to live here and shop here. It bothers me that I have to go to Oakdale because I don't want to spend $7 on a gallon of milk, but I'm willing to compensate by spending it on gas to get to somewhere else to buy it cheaper. Somehow in my head, I think it's reasonable, but I would like to see some of these vacant buildings on Main Street turn into something more. Walk down Main Street on the weekend with your kids and get an ice cream and look at all the shops. And I want to see the community thriving is what I would like.
Thank you.
And what do you see as the challenges and opportunities in the city's future in the next year, as well as the next 5 to 10 years?
So I don't know all the challenges. I'm going to be very transparent that I have no knowledge of the Planning Commission and all that it entails. I am a very quick learner, and I already in my full-time job as a cold case investigator deal with the law and codes and whatnot every day. So I am educated in that respect. I think that state mandates are an issue that we need to look at very closely. I think we need to have senior housing is a huge issue. We need to take care of our seniors. We need to, the Irwin project, for instance, these bills that are coming down at the state level, we cannot defy their orders. We have to be compliant or we put our city at risk. So there are creative ways that I believe we can encompass what they're asking of us, but at the same time, make it so Escalon residents are becoming the priority and not residents from out of town. In terms of opportunity, the opportunities are endless.
Thank you.
Thanks for applying. Planning commissioners are often asked to weigh the interests of a property owner seeking to develop its property and the potential economic or social benefits of a development proposal with the concerns of existing nearby residents who are affected by the development proposal. Frequently at a public hearing, you will hear testimony only from those who are opposed to the project. What are your thoughts on this potential conflict, and how would you respond as a planning commissioner?
Well, I think that no matter what you propose, somebody's going to complain about it. That's just human nature. I believe that there should be influence from the community. I think the community should have a say-so. I do also believe that, you know, when I purchased my home, I checked the schools, I checked the zoning, the neighborhood. If there was a vacant lot, I saw what the potential was. So I did my due diligence, and I think that homeowners need to take accountability and do the same thing. However, I also am a firm believer that we can get creative in the ways that we compromise on an issue. You know, if the community, let's say for the McDonald's situation, if they're worried about the lights from the cars in the drive-through, perhaps McDonald's would be willing to build a solid cement wall, you know, right on that back line to help alleviate that. Perhaps the city could provide blackout curtains. I don't know. There's got to be some sort of discussion, and I think that is what, as community members, we're looking for, is for us to be included in that decision, or at least felt like we have some sort of say-so in the matter.
All right. And then give us an example of an instance in which you had to publicly take a stand that was not widely popular.
Just one?
Just one.
I actually run the Escalon residence page, and every single day, multiple times a day, I have to take a stand. That some people don't like what I have to say, but there are rules and regulations within the group, and we need people to be compliant with that and respectful. And although I don't always agree with you know, some of the things that are taking place, if somebody complains, you know, I have to deal with it accordingly. And 9 times out of 10, I'm the bad guy on there. So every day, Sean.
And I thought I had it rough.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it.
I'm sorry, can I get one?
Yes.
Gabriella, can I get
Sorry.
one more question? I'm sorry.
See how you are?
Well, it was in regards to the page, and I think that brings up a good point. So there are a lot of comments that happen to come up on the page, and some of those may end up pertaining, as you've seen, like with the McDonald's issue and other items on Planning Commission. How would you handle those situations where there were comments being made on the page that you're the administrator for, but there was a bunch of comments? I don't know if we have legal on board somewhere, like would she have to refrain from responding to those? Or I guess first, before I get the answer from Dominique, how would you handle that situation with people commenting on an issue that you're going to be making a decision on in the future?
So first and foremost, as it stands right now, this has come up where you're the admin of the page, you know, why are you, you know, having an opinion one way or the other? I'm a human being first, I'm an individual, and I have the right to my opinion. I've made it very clear boundaries where if I am posting as an admin of the page, the post will say admin post. Anything else that I post is as a member of this community. However, stepping over into a role like this, those boundaries would have to be more clearly defined and tightened. I, of course, wouldn't want to do anything that would compromise, you know, being in that position, and would most likely refrain from commenting on anything of that sort, even correcting someone if I knew the information that they were giving was wrong. But I can't stop people from talking about it or bringing up they want to, you know, start a petition or whatnot, but I can refrain from encouraging them to do so.
Well, I think that's kind of where I was going with that too, is people are going to comment, and I appreciate the page, so don't get me wrong, just how you would handle the situation where you as the administrator would have some kind of say in there. But I think you answered the question in the sense that you would have to set a set of, to make sure I understood correctly, that you would have to set a specific set of boundaries which restricted you from doing things to, say, violate the Brown Act or those types of things, and that would be something you're cognizant of
I
at
would
this
like
time?
to, I would have my own personal boundaries where I would refrain from, it's no secret that I'm very vocal okay? And during the campaigning, I was very vocal on the election process. Similar to that, I would not do things like that. I would not be, once you're in a position where you're working with the city, it's not professional nor ethical to be having those discussions with residents. But I would be very encouraging of, if there was something we were looking for the public to give insight for, but not in a position where I was having an opinion on something.
Okay. Thank you.
And I manage that role very well. I'm a mother to 4 kids, and I work with law enforcement where, things have to be confidential and what I tell families and what I discuss with the police. So I have 2 sides that I have to deal with daily, so I'm very fluent in those boundaries.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up would be Ronnie Van Dyke. Good evening. Quick synopsis of why you'd like to be on Planning Commission, and we'll ask some questions.
Okay, I wanted to participate in the community, which is why I selected Planning Commission. I looked at rec. I've coached in the community for about 7 years at all of the different sports that were needed. But I am a construction-minded person. I've been a project manager. I have a general contractor's license. And I've been working in the industry for, it will be 18 years in April. So my experience in construction will be an adult here shortly. I have attended previous Planning Commission meetings, and I think that having somebody on the team that understands drawings, understands capabilities of a property would really serve the community to be able to explain the different nuances or the changes that could be made or alternates, and comparing that to a set of rules and regulations or a general plan and what the community has. I also have a bachelor's degree in sociology. My main study was community development, elderly, and children. So I see things from a different perspective. My day job and my passion kind of intermingle in the way that I go about doing things. I like to see all sides and really dive into everything from a devil's advocate and what's good and what's bad about it, and how do we meet in the middle as far as making decisions on things.
Thank you. Councilman?
Mrs. Van Dyke, thank you for applying. My question to you would be, do you have any current or potential conflicts that may interfere with your decisions on the Planning Commission?
So the only thing that I could see is if I had a project that, or a development in the city limits, I would just recuse myself of any decisions made and try to stay out of it completely so that everybody else can make informed decisions.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on residential growth?
I think that residential growth, and on to the next question, commercial and industrial.
Thank you.
I think they kind of go hand in hand. There's supposed to be a balance in the general plan for the community. It does speak to that there's a balance. And so it kind of goes case by case as far as what is presented, and looking at what kind of the groundwork has been laid, and bringing in the community response and how they feel about it. So I think it's all about who has the money to build something that kind of drives what we're doing and what we're working with. We really, as far as I stand, I don't have a say that you build this house or you build that house, but when you bring it to me, I'm gonna go off of everything that I know and everything that's available and everything that's told to me to make a decision on go or no go.
Thanks. We'll go ahead and go off to you then.
Sure. What do you see as the challenges and opportunities in the city's future in the next year, as well as the next 5 to 10 years?
I think our infrastructure has obviously been a challenge. We've had near my community, issues with the water lines breaking and different things like that. I don't know that my ability on Planning Commission can really do much about that. As far as pushing for certain things, people have to bring things, and I have to make a recommendation based on what like I said, the groundwork and what's kind of been put in place as far as the growth, or not the growth, but the stability of our infrastructure. So I think there's things that could be done. I just hope that they come around to be done if I'm a part of it.
Thank you for applying. So planning commissioners are often asked to weigh the interests of a property owner seeking to develop its property and the potential economic or social benefits of a development proposal with the concerns of existing nearby residents who are affected by the development proposal. Frequently, at a public hearing, you will hear testimony only from those who are opposed to the project. What are your thoughts on this potential conflict, and how would you respond as a planning commissioner?
So my stance on conflict is this: there's no such thing as a bad conflict. Conflict always generates a conversation that needs to be had, and it's important for people to be heard, and for you to take into consideration what they've said, but then you also have to go along with, what's in place, rules, regulations, codes, the state, all of that. I think everybody deserves to be heard. I have no problem hearing it. I'm open-minded about everything that is brought to me, and I just kind of go off of what the details are, what the facts are, and what the abilities.
And then the piggyback question is, give us an example of an instance in which you had to publicly take a stand that was not widely popular.
Not to touch on the project itself, but I did attend a planning commission meeting recently, and a lot of people were here opposing the plan, and my sole purpose was to come and say, okay, how can we make it work? And it's not that I believe one way or the other, or my feelings are as valid as my feelings are as a community member. It was, let's stir up the conversation and talk about it. And I feel like coming to something or coming up against something like that is, if you come into it open-minded and ready to listen, you're gonna hear things, but it's gonna become mutual. It just has a natural way of doing that when everybody, we all live in this town because we like it here. And everybody has ideas. Some are good, some are bad, and it's just weeding through it. And I think that bringing a positive, collaboration mentality is always going to win out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next up, Marion Van Vliet. We'll ask us, similar to everybody else, a quick synopsis of why you'd like to be on Planning Commission, then we'll ask some questions.
Well, I'm here just because it's kind of in my nature to serve. I've recently retired from my position at our church as administrative pastor, and I love serving there. I love our community. I've been here since I was 3 years old, not in the city itself. I've been in the city itself for the last 21 years, and I just love our community and just want to be able to give back and just to serve. Don't have a lot of experience when it comes to being on a planning commission, but I am open-minded. I'm able to see the big picture of things, and look forward to serving.
Thank you. Councilman Engel?
All right. Mr. Van Vliet?
Yep.
Thank you for applying. My question is, do you have any current or potential conflicts that may interfere with your decisions on the Planning Commission?
No, the only thing I own in the community is a home, as long as it doesn't interfere with that.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on residential growth?
Well, I think people move to this community because of the size that it is, and they like that it is a little bit smaller. I do appreciate the growth ordinances that are currently in place, and not that maybe add to that a little bit, but I think controlled growth is still a good option.
Piggybacking off of that, your thoughts on commercial and industrial growth as well for our town?
Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with commercial and industrial growth in the city except for what I see. Obviously, we do need, if the city's going to grow, we do need additional commercial and industrial opportunities for people to work at, different places for people to shop. I know that's a difficult thing here in our community to keep the people here local, purchasing local, from local vendors, local businesses. My wife had a shop here years ago, and it was tough. And somehow, maybe making a way to make it more feasible for the current businesses to be successful in our community.
Thank you.
And what do you see are the challenges and opportunities in the city's future in the next year, as well as the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think probably our biggest challenges are going to be from mostly government, large federal and state intervention in our trying to control and mandate the things that we can and cannot do. Especially, I think, with our current administration, it's going to be difficult, and I don't know all the details of what the Planning Commission does, so I don't know exactly what that would look like as far as the future, but as things come up, I'm sure we'll deal with them well.
Thank you.
I thought I'd have this memorized, but I'm still looking at the paper. But thank you for applying. Planning commissioners are often asked to weigh the interests of a property owner seeking to develop its property and the potential economic or social benefits of a development proposal with the concerns of existing nearby residents who are affected by the development proposal. Frequently, at a public hearing, you will hear testimony only from those who are opposed to the project. What are your thoughts on this potential conflict, and how would you respond as a planning commissioner?
I was reading the minutes of, I think it was your December meeting or November meeting, where you guys were considering the McDonald's project, and the only thing that I saw in there was those that were opposed to the project. Yet, in listening to people in the community, they want a McDonald's, but they don't want it in their backyard. And so somebody has to pay the price of having it somewhere. And no matter where you put it, that neighbor is going to be not probably happy. But there again, as a collective group of 5 people on the Planning Commission, I think they can deal with that, and whether it goes against what the general public says, I think we can do that.
All right. And then give us an example of an instance in which you had to publicly take a stand that was not widely popular.
Well, serving at our church for 20 years, obviously you have a lot of people with lots of opinions, and I probably can't go into individual circumstances, but there was often times where I'm always the person that has to deal with conflict, or the one that has to address the person that is not happy. So it's something I got used to, and I'm not afraid to do, just because I think, like the previous person says, conflict does create conversation, and a lot of times those conversations end up developing relationships that are actually end up becoming better instead of worse.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Appreciate the time. Thank you, sir. All right, team, at this point, we've heard from all 6 candidates at this point. Take a moment to gather your thoughts here. Are we at a position where we think we have a couple of candidates that we would like to possibly move forward with tonight? Or is this something we would like to table and think about and make a vote at our next meeting? Would be our other opportunity, right? Correct?
Next Monday.
Next Monday. So I guess that would be the question. We want to do decisions tonight or do a decision next Monday?
I'm just curious as to how that kind of nomination process works. Do we have something laid out? Is there a structure to follow as far as?
So in general, the mayor can make appointments, and as long as the council agrees to them, majority, those appointments can be made. Or we can hold a nomination process where I would open nominations, and each of you could nominate someone or take the opportunity to nominate a candidate that you're interested in. And then we would essentially take a roll call vote or a vote on each candidate and then whoever was appointed at that point, we can make the determination on which term we'd like to put them at. So it could be done either way.
Well, I mean, I don't want to put Dave on the spot or anything, but if that's precedence, then,
Either way,
I don't think we really have a
I've seen it
precedent
done
necessarily with our process,
ways.
but either way.
Yeah, in the past, we used to have the subcommittee where it was 2 members of council that would conduct interviews and then make a recommendation to council.
gotcha.
So we changed that process this last year to where the council does it as a whole. And so it could be open nomination where each one, and you can make numerous nominations.
Or we, yeah,
You know, and we just play out a vote on each nomination.
so say, do we want to have someone make a motion, and if we get a second, then we have a vote?
You could do each one individually as well if you like.
Or,
Guess we could just,
it's up to, I guess the question is everybody comfortable making decisions tonight? I guess we should get that out of the way first as a decision, if we decide to go forward and make nominations.
We allowed to vote for all 6?
You're allowed to vote for whoever you want, so long as only 2 of them are approved. So you'll have to track your voting.
Right, so it's the first 2. The first 2 that are in the nominations that are approved with the vote. So whoever gets 3 first.
So if somebody nominates and
Right.
Yeah, the
Seconds
first
and-
2 that would be
That
approved.
qualify.
it gets 3 or more
At least
votes.
3 votes, yeah.
Well, before we get into nominations, my last comment was kind of half joking, but it's also half serious, because I think all 6 candidates would bring a unique perspective to the Planning Commission. And I think that's, all 6 represent different areas of our city, and I think that's what we need. And so I said it briefly, but again, I just want to reiterate, thank you all 6 of you for taking the time to apply. I did serve on the Planning Commission for 6.5 years. I enjoyed my time there, and I think whoever gets on the Planning Commission will really enjoy it as well. It's a good group.
And also encourage those that may not make it to continue to participate and be a voice at those meetings as well. So are we okay to make nominations tonight? I guess that's the question I'm
I'd
looking
like
to
to
get
wait
at.
till Monday.
You'd like to
Yeah.
wait till Monday and put some thought into the questions?
I would, yeah.
Okay. Any other
yeah, I'm
thoughts?
okay either way.
Yeah, I'm good to make a nomination now.
Mr. Stroman, your thoughts?
I don't know. I'm thinking.
We're thinking that hard. Maybe we should wait till Monday, put some notes together and make those decisions on Monday. Have some thoughts for that?
Is there a conflict that you want to kind of resolve in your own head? Or Councilman Stroman, is there?
I'm sorry, I was zoning.
Is there a kind of a conflict or a struggle you want to kind of resolve, need some time to figure it out, or?
No, Mayor Pro Tem, I mean, like I said a few minutes ago, I mean, I think all 6 candidates are viable. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I mean, I could nominate all 6. But I would agree that I would like some time to think about this and to review these and, I mean, review the resumes again further in depth. I would like to make a motion that we table the Planning Commission appointments to our next meeting, which is next Monday night.
Motion on the table. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Looks like we'll wait till Monday then to make the appointments.
So appointments to Planning Commission will be scheduled for the Monday, March 6th meeting, which is next Monday. And then just to remind you, we gave you these folders. These are unredacted versions of things, and so I need those back from you. It has contact information and such, so if you could leave those behind.
Okay.
So our next item,
Number 2.
yes, took this as an opportunity, since we started the meeting an hour earlier, to go ahead and give an informational update and presentation regarding the City of Escalon Surface Water Connection Project with SSJID. And so I do have Ardura, who's formerly known as Giuliani and Cole. That's our company that we have contract services for city engineer services with. This is Bradley Waldrop, and this is Nick Pritchard, and they're here to make that presentation for you.
Welcome, gentlemen. Appreciate the time to come down and talk to us.
Thanks for having us.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will do what I can to provide you a 30,000-foot look of the SSJID surface water connection project. I'm sure there are a ton of questions, and rather than this being a simple monologue from me to you, please stop me and ask questions along the way if you'd like to know some more information, or if you feel more comfortable taking it all in and then asking them at the end, you can too. Just a little bit nicer to have it more interactive. Next slide, please. So in tonight's presentation, it's very simple. We're going to give you a project overview. The project overview is going to include things about SSJID, about this term called Sigma that you may have never heard of, and a little bit about where we currently are. We're going to talk a little bit about the need for the project, the total purpose of it, fundamentally what the current status of the project is, and then a quick overview of what those next steps are. And like I said before, it'd be all right to jump in and ask questions along the way. So I'm assuming you guys have it on your screen in front of you, and so if I notice your eyes go down, I'm imagining that you're just not bored. So for the SSJID program itself, it's originally developed to help communities get away from groundwater usage. We have a challenge in the valley for groundwater usage because of the quality of water and how hard it is to get to the water. As the aquifer continues to reduce, we end up with challenges for concentration of elements in the water, and it's not as healthy, and it's hard to go and get the water and have it consistently available to us. What you're going to find out later is that it's actually a law that we have to make some changes and move away from wells and work with a surface water program. So if you look at the goals of the SSJID surface water program, it is to protect and enhance the economic health of the communities around them. It is also to avoid those adverse impacts to current agricultural customers, right? This is an agricultural community and everyone wants water. We want to make sure that they have high quality water to be able to use. And it's to ensure that there's adequate water supply within the area and reduce the area's lack of resilience. If you go to the next slide, you'll actually see just sort of a very big picture view of what the SSJID water connection project is. We're going to dive into some of the details, not all of them, but some of the details. And you'll see there that the Woodward Reservoir is on your right. There's a pipeline that goes from the Woodward Reservoir over to a water treatment facility on Dodds Road that SSJID manages. And they're currently almost at capacity. They're getting ready to do another expansion out there. And then they push the water through a 48-inch pipeline all the way down Dodds Road, and it continues out way past Lathrop. I was privileged to be on the original project as a subconsultant to Black & Veatch in the early 2000s. And it was a fascinating project and had no idea what the implication at the time was going to be for local communities. However, this particular project picks up water from that 48-inch diameter pipeline in Dodds Road at Escalon Balota and comes straight down Escalon Balota to the north city limits of Escalon. And that pipeline, as we get to talk about it, you'll see a little bit more of the features in there. We've got some decisions we need to make on where certain facilities will go. So I would like to talk a little bit more about sort of the city system and why we need what we've got or what's going on. If you go to 2 more slides. This is a busy diagram, and I'll make it less busy in the next one. I just want you to see the overall view of everything in the city. There are 4 major wells that we're going to be talking about in the city. So if you go to the next one, you'll see well number 1 that's been highlighted there It's 600 gallons per minute that has, of capacity, and a 500,000 gallon storage facility. But what's really important about this well is it's currently non-operational. So even though it shows we have capacity, where it's non-operational because of the nitrates that are above the maximum levels and other contaminants. So there is a project to do well 1A that supplements this and to bring that back well water at this location. Then if you go to well 10 next, this is sort of a workhorse well. It generates 1,300 gallons per minute all year long. Well 1, I forgot to mention, it is a summer peak type well. This one operates year long, and it is generating water, and it's highly relied on within the city system.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question. You
Please
said you
do.
want this interactive.
Yeah, let's do it.
So with this surface water project,
Yep.
is well 1A going to be necessary?
Well 1A is necessary in the interim because getting the pipeline in the ground, you'll see it's a very long-term project. And we have had experience where there's a lot of stress on the water system as is. So we need a water supply now, but we don't need the massive capacity that could possibly come off of the surface water project. Does that make sense?
So, and not putting words in your mouth, but well 1A is a interim project until the surface water project would be complete?
Yes. We would have capacity with the surface water project to be able to bring well 1A offline at times, but having it available for the summer peak is really important.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. Thanks for asking.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, jump in.
Question for you. You had said there's laws basically dictating that we have to do this.
Yep.
Would you consider those mandates then?
Yeah, I'll get to them in just a minute.
The reason I ask is because I don't know if that's something we can look into on that unfunded mandate thing. See if that's possible.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about funding toward the end as well. Maybe there's some other ideas in here too.
Okay.
Okay, so we talked about well 10, sort of the workhorse, right? And then well 9 is 800 gallons per minute. It operates also in the summer months, and it's starting to experience some higher nitrate values as well. Nitrate values come from the leaching of, what do you call them? I can't think of it.
Pesticides.
Pesticides, thank you very much, and fertilizers.
Is 40 still the state limit?
I believe that 40 is, I don't know. Do you know the answer?
40?
I don't know the answer. I can find it for you. I'll get it for you.
Pretty close.
All right. And then lastly, another workhorse that deals with year-round work and peak demand is well number 3A at 1,100 gallons per minute. Okay? It's at the south end of town. If we go to the next one, this is where we talk a little bit about the law. So in 2014, something interesting happened throughout the state of California. There was this large push in sustainability and increase in resilience. And if you look at this map, and it's a little bit hard to see, but all of that hot pink area in the middle of the state are in aquifers or groundwater storage that's in overdraft. Overdraft simply means that we're pulling out more water than is going in, and the levels of available water are decreasing year over year. So those decreases have challenges with water quality, with dependability, and it creates subsidence in the land adjacent to it. So the state decided that what they really wanted to do was work together in these big basins. So there are underground aquifers that sit in the area that all of the residents in this area and others tap into, and they're called basins. They happen to be geographically bounded. So the state asked for each one of these basins to come up with a plan and implement that plan to stop this problem by the year 2034.
All right. Is this your graphic, or does this come from DWR?
That came from DWR.
I'm just wondering if they left the Los Angeles Basin off on purpose.
I don't know the answer to that, but it's certainly not my graphic. It's their graphic. And so in this process, we are in the East San Joaquin Basin. And it was, like I said, it was developed in 2014 with an understanding of it not just being understood in a plan, but implemented by 2034. And local agencies like yours have been scrambling since 2014 to try to figure out how to do it, because they didn't have a plan. They were all relying on groundwater, and now all of a sudden we have to shift to get supplied with surface water. And
Can I interrupt you there for a moment?
yeah.
Are there guidelines or regulations that are involved with the development and implementation? So are there limitations? Are they saying you must divert this amount of water?
Yes. Each one of the basins has a working group associated to them and involvement from local stakeholders that started developing plans in 2014. And each of those plans are being rolled out. And then the local jurisdictions are then having to adopt those plans because they've had a participatory seat at the table as each one of those plans are developed. And those plans are developed by guidelines at DWR.
Escalon is currently a member with a sustainable groundwater group with the city of Ripon and SSJID. That's our groundwater group.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, and then if we sort of provide you a little bit of history on how we got here, if you go to the next one. In September of 2021, a report was produced looking at 3 different alternatives to bring this pipeline into town. Some of those, so alternative A took the pipeline further into, I think it was well 1A, and then Plan B took it to, remember? Okay, that's right. So, I'm sorry. So the alternative B brought it to the Hogan Park where we're considering putting the pump station, and you'll see it in just a second. However, putting in a 500,000 gallon tank above ground. This one does not. This one has a much smaller tank and the ability to expand as necessary for the purposes of just simply reducing the impact to the community and the cost of having to build a 500,000 gallon reservoir. Okay, so based on that, in fact, you'll see the existing system now simply has a 500,000 gallon reservoir that feeds into the entire system that is all sourced by well 1, which is inactive, the proposed well 1A, well 3, well 9, and well 10, and there's a distribution network to the north and a distribution network to the south. The alternative A, if you go to the next one, you'll see that what they were thinking about doing is taking a pipeline and bringing it directly to this reservoir, this 500,000 gallon reservoir, and then adjusting the amount of water that you're getting out of the wells to all go into the reservoir and feed the distribution systems. Okay? And then alternative B puts in a new 500,000 gallon reservoir at Hogan Park and then pumps that water into the system. You get more capacity and more opportunity to store water, but you end up with a 500,000 gallon reservoir in a park above ground, which is kind of tricky, okay, and expensive. And then alternative C, which you'll see in the next slide, is what the recommendation was. Recommendation was tee into the pipeline in Dodds Road, the 45-inch pipeline at Dodds Road, come straight down to the park and build a pump station with a small tank, so pump the water into a tank that will allow us to adjust the amount of flow that goes into the water system, the both north and south water system, and have a flow control facility in the middle. The flow control facility is owned and operated by SSJID so that they can help meter water in and out or into or slow down water into the city. And the idea is Wherever this flow control facility sits, SSJID will own and maintain the pipeline from that point north up to their main transmission line. And the city and the city's facility then becomes from the south all the way down into the city. All right, so in the preliminary work that we've been doing, we're trying to find a good site for this crazy thing. Alternatives have been all the way up at Dodds Road to say, SSJID, this is what you want. You run as little water or little pipeline as possible to have to own and maintain. We've looked at it. Let's bring it all the way down to the park and let SSJID own the whole thing, or a compromise that happens to be in an area where there's actually some property that fits for the flow control facility, and it's kind of halfway in the middle. So it's just convenient that way. This pipeline is just over 3 miles long, and the split there is about 1.5 miles north of the city is where the flow control facility is. If you go to the next slide, you'll actually see a picture of where we think that the flow control facility can go. So it's at Mariposa, and there is a segment in there. We've already had San Joaquin County provide us a little bit of feedback on this particular location. SSJID has flow control facilities in locations like this throughout their network. We believe this is a really good option, and the San Joaquin County is willing to continue to have over-the-shoulder reviews with us to make sure that we're not citing this in a place that doesn't make any sense. This is their right-of-way. It's not the city's right-of-way, and it's not SSJID's right-of-way, right? It's the county's right-of-way. And so it would require an easement within their right-of-way to be able to build this and other facilities around it so that we don't end up with folks running into it and whatnot, so putting in barrier rails and things like that.
Is that something that has to have CHP approval or anything like that?
No.
Sheriffs or anybody with
not right now.
Just the county?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll actually see a little bit of what I was talking about in a smaller subterranean tank. So we've got a 500,000 gallon subterranean tank, or not a 500,000, 10,000 gallon, 100,000 gallon tank underground, where we pump water from the SSJID pipeline into this tank, and then we meter it into the facility for distribution. And the conversation so far has been to make sure that we're turning over enough water in that pipeline so it doesn't get stale and we don't have additional testing and other things. So they want us to be able to guarantee taking 250 million gallons an hour, no, 250 million gallons a day through this, 250 GPM, excuse me, that's what the number is, in order for us to be able to turn over the water that's in the pipe. And if we did the math, that's about where we are in a need. It's a little bit more water than we would normally need to supplement some of the summer flows. And so by the time you average it out, it works out pretty close.
All right, next question.
Yep.
You talked about the subterranean tank being more cost-effective than the above-ground tank.
Yeah.
However, doing the excavation that's needed for a subterranean tank, so comparatively, what are the cost differences between a subterranean tank and an above-grade tank?
Do you remember the estimate?
Between C.
Might be.
That's where I was gonna say about $1 million less. Yeah.
That's the biggest difference. The larger tank. Use the microphone?
Yeah, sure.
So option B, that has an above-ground tank. It is much larger than what this option C has. So the construction costs, I don't think, are really one-to-one, because you'd have a larger tank, but this would also be a smaller subterranean tank. This one for C would be about 30 feet by 30 feet by 15 feet deep. So it's not incredibly deep or incredibly large. It's only 100,000 gallons. So it's cheaper. That's why it was recommended for C. It didn't go as far, so you use less, excuse me, you use less pipe than the other alternatives. The pipe is smaller because you're using less, you're going farther, and we have a smaller tank.
But my concern is, so with a subterranean tank, in the event of a brownout or a blackout, you have to pump the water out of the subterranean tank to backfeed the distribution system. Whereas if you had an above-grade tank and it was gravity fed, you wouldn't be reliant on electricity, whereas you would be able to provide the residents water in an above-grade tank as opposed to being reliant on the pumps to pump us water out of a subterranean tank.
To an extent, you would have a head pressure with the above-ground tank. The option B does have booster pumps also to get it up to the working pressure that we have in the city. So yes, in a brownout, you might have some head pressure. These also, not shown here, you'd have an electrical room. We would have most likely generator connections, so the city could energize this pump station and keep it operational even if the entire city was out of power.
Thanks.
A quick question on, you were saying on that county-controlled piece of land that you were thinking about.
Flow control.
Yeah, does that create any issues for us as far as local control issues, or, in other words, county somehow controlling our water in some weird way?
So the pipeline goes in an easement that you have access to, and the flow control facility also goes in an easement. All of the ownership of the facility from the flow control north would be all at SSJID, not the county, it would be SSJID, and then you would own and maintain the pipeline from the south of the flow control facility. So the part of the activities that we're working on now is clearing of the right-of-way, and that is to clearly understand and demarc the rights to that property so that you would not have to be beholden to the county. Once they approved it, you would have access to it, and it would be yours forever.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back to the tank.
Yeah, please do.
Because in my opinion, a water tank, yeah, 500,000 gallons is a big tank. But as what we've seen in our neighbor to the west, southwest, a water tank becomes a sense of community pride. And the community rallies around a water tank. You know, as we mentioned earlier tonight, this city has 3 state championships in the last 4 years, and it would be I think it'd be wonderful to post on the side of a water tank, "Welcome to Escalon, home of the state champions," and then when people come down Escalon Balota, that's the very first thing they see. So, I understand the smaller tank, but is there a potential cost savings to take this smaller tank and do it above grade, and then you would also be less reliant on the electricity in the rolling brownout and blackout, and then rely on the head pressure in the event of a power outage?
Certainly look at it. Yeah, certainly look at it.
I mean, because quite honestly, we, as a city, we have no idea what PG&E is going to do. And I have nothing against, well, yeah, I have a lot of things against PG&E, but in this position, our job as city council is to look out for the interests of all residents. And so if we're relying on the pumps and electricity, I think it would be beneficial, as long as it didn't derail the project, that we seriously consider less reliant on electricity and more gravity-fed system.
Seems like a generator would be kind of standard in all of those for emergency response. I don't see them allowing pressure to drop, and really is a gravity-fed tank from whatever height going to provide enough pressure to adequately serve the city? I think the answer would be no.
So,
please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I appreciate the comment, and I also appreciate the interaction of trying to figure out sort of what the other alternatives are. I know for an absolute fact, SSJID has required for us to put in a emergency generator at the flow control facility, And we have already noted that we'll have an emergency generator at the pump station at the park. I also know that SSJID has a solar farm that they're putting in at the treatment facility, or it's almost completely in, that they're also relying on that to provide battery storage and additional backup, because they also don't like to have to rely on anybody else to get water where it belongs. So, good questions, great questions.
He was asking one question, I don't know if you had.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
It yet. In regards to how high does it have to be logically to gravity feed the town?
That would be something that we'd have to look at, is we'd have to figure out how high so that we had enough water pressure that would do it on its own through gravity.
I guess I just want to know if it's even logical, you know?
I would say that we seem to be thinking of a large water tower.
Yeah.
This is not a water tower, it's a tank. Also, it needs to be gravity fed. Our source is higher, the elevation is higher at Dodds Road than it is in here. The subterranean tank and then a low, larger tank would be filled with gravity. But if we want to get into the point where we can sustain water pressures, we're talking about a water tower.
And then it becomes cost prohibitive, because then you're spending so much money on large pumps to take the water so high in order to make it a gravity-fed system.
So through all this, option C just kind of shakes out to be the best of you know, it's subterranean, allows for gravity flow, smaller, out of the way.
I would ask one clarification question on the question of the generator. Is that part of our current plan to have one on site during the process of the build? It would be sitting there on site, connected, ready to go. We just got to feed it the diesel kind of thing?
Yes, so the way this project works is that you build all of the facilities before you tie into the 48-inch. So there's no demand to deliver anything until we're ready to tie in, right? And then we cut in.
Right.
And when we cut in, we then test it for the disinfection and making sure that the installation went well. And then we turn the water on. So I think what I hear you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're asking is, during construction, if we need to rely on a emergency generator in order to deliver water, we could deliver water.
No, I'm actually asking, after the project is complete and you're done, we signed off a check, is there a generator sitting on site?
Yes.
At that point?
Yes.
And it's already in our price for option C?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not looking to have to add a generator later and do that. So it's already included in the project process?
It is, for both the flow control facility and the pump station.
Okay, that's what,
And
thank you.
this generator setup is solar driven, you're saying, or is it?
No, these generators, at the flow control facility, the SSJID has requested it be propane fired.
Okay.
And we have not determined what the fuel source will be at the one at the park yet.
Okay.
So we're not exactly sure how big it needs to be yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, and then if you can go to the next slide, please, you'll see a little bit more about what we were talking about for the park. This is a future park site where we're siting this pump station and subterranean tank is within an existing parking lot. And then the idea is in the future, that park master plan would have a skate park at this location, but we can move it north and not impact the master plan of the park. So we'll still get a skate park plus the pump station on city-owned property. Okay? And then if you go to the next slide. So the current activities, we're about halfway through the 30% development of the project, in which we have already identified all of the topographic features all up and down the 3 miles of road for Escalon Balota. We understand what sides of the road we prefer the pipeline to be on, where we want the flow control facility for property ownership issues, and where we want it for the pump station at the park. So the next adventure in here is for us to develop some more the details to figure out how we're going to get under a couple creeks, how we're going to do some crossings, and to work with the county to ensure that they're okay with where we have the flow control facility and that they don't have other utilities coming in along the alignment that we just don't know about right now. And then at the same time, we're going through an initial study and mitigated negative declaration environmental process for the project. We're also looking at any utility relocations that may be necessary, and then depending on the feedback we get from San Joaquin County and others, we may end up having to look for property for a flow control facility, but where we have it sited, we don't have that plan. The plan is to not have to acquire any new property for this project. You can go to the next facility, or the next slide, please. So just an overview of some of the financing side of this. This is just a very quick snapshot. The fees for this project were being collected in 2014, and they're being assessed to folks' water bill already, and they're coming into a fund that the city already has. And the total balance of the fund for the city for this project at the moment is $942,000 and change, which is tricky because I think if you go to the next slide, you're actually going to see, try one more and we'll come back to this. Oh, I didn't include it in here. I'm not sure why. So what we believe the cost of this project is, it was originally estimated to be about $4.7, $4.8 million in 2021. That's a lifetime ago, at least it feels like, for inflation and other challenges. And by the time we're ready to go to construction with this job, we think that the real dollars are probably about $6 million for the project. So there's just shy of $1 million now, and where we think it's going to have to be at $6 million for construction. SSGID has already indicated that there may be grant opportunities to be able to help bridge the funding gap, and they have offered to support us in helping understand what that is and putting us in the right direction for those grants. We just have to give them a little bit more information on where we are and have a little bit more refined project for them, and then we can get started with that process. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see kind of where we're headed. So 30% design is wrapping up at the end of the spring here. We should have a full set of plans and everything else for folks to look at late spring, early summer. And then at the same time, while we're doing this, we have already started the environmental document. We've already started the encroachment permit process with the county, and we've already started the right-of-way and utility relocation process that just simply takes time. And then that will run concurrent with a final design, and then it'll go to construction. We're hoping, it could go to construction, let's say this, it can go to construction as early as 2025, as long as the funding is put in place. That's going to be the biggest challenge.
In regards to the funding, is there time limitations that you're aware of for the grants that SSJID has offered to help us obtain?
So generally speaking, I can tell you, I've been in the federally funded projects business for a long time, and generally there's some sort of sunset date to the money that you're given. However, if you can continue to prove forward movement on a project and it's not simply inactive, then they will generally continue to provide that funding. We have seen in other circumstances, maybe not exactly like this, where the federal government or local government will claw back money because it's not being used. But right now, I don't have enough information to know what the details are of those grants and what that risk really is.
And how far away would we be currently from being able to provide SSJID the information that they need to be able to help us?
I think we're going to be able to do that this summer, by June. I think we'll have them the information that they need to start this activity by June. They're already also running some numbers for us to understand a little bit about the cost of delivering the water, so that all sort of gets baked into the total cost of the project as well. And they have indicated to Dominique that they're working on what that pricing program might look like, initial cost plus sort of connection fee plus additional dollars per gallon as it's delivered.
I actually just spoke to their general manager today too, who just sent me a grant opportunity. So they were offered one, and he said, well, we thought about you, and so I'm giving you this information so that you can submit for it, for our project. So they're very open to trying to help us however, in any way that they can, to see that we can get funding for this project. We've also submitted the projects to both Congressman Harder's office as well as Assemblymember Flora's office, along with the wastewater treatment plant.
Do we have any percentage breakdown as to the cost for design, permitting, and construction? Do you have a percentage breakdown?
Yes, so generally speaking, rule of thumb is about 10% of construction costs on the front end for design, permitting, and the rest, and then about 10% on the back end for construction management, inspection, and sort of follow through commissioning. Generally speaking, sort of round numbers.
You go a slide up. You said that this was already being allocated into our water.
So actually,
Or is this the sell-off of our allocated water?
This is the sell-off for Tracy. I didn't get a chance to forward that to you. These monies, since 2014, the city council has been, had restricted this money to be put away specifically for this project. So this is the money that we received from the city of Tracy for selling our water to them. And then we do have additional monies in the sewer fund that are being collected, but these are to start construction, like the first, to get us going. So we had a meeting with council probably around the same time, so it would have been like late 2021, and we gathered that by the time that this project met construction, we're still collecting these monies, there would roughly be about $1 million that we would be needing for additional revenue to complete the project.
Are we in contract with the city of Tracy for that water? And if
Yes.
so, when does that contract expire?
It's ongoing, I believe. I don't believe it has an expiration. But it has information, you know, that either one can dismiss the contract with certain terms. I actually spoke to staff from the city of Tracy a few weeks ago, and they're interested in any additional waters that we would have with this project.
Is there ability
So
to
as-
renegotiate that contract? It appears for the 10 years, they haven't experienced any rate increase in the water that we're selling them. Is there a way to increase revenue by renegotiating that?
I can look into that. I believe we're just honoring the rates that SSJAD has. I think we're just honoring those rates. I'd have to look into our contract to see if that's something that we would be able to do.
'Cause it just looks flat, so would that mean that
Yeah, it's
over
a
the
flat
last,
amount every year.
would that mean over the last 10 years that our cost of water from SSJID has not increased over the last 10 years?
Well, I'm not sure about their rates. Right now, we're not purchasing any water from them, except for they just take our allocation. And so I'd have to look at the rates and see if they've had adjustments. But it's my understanding that if they had adjustments, they would be applied because these are supposed to be collected off of the SSJID rates. But that's definitely something I can look into.
Okay, thank you.
They did indicate interest. Whatever water you don't want, please think of us first.
So that was my question. This is going to be going through the flow control, and then we won't be taking all of our allocation, supposedly. The rest of that allocation, can we go ahead and continue selling to Tracy? And that would be a percentage, so we would get part of it and we'd sell the rest off. Is that
Correct.
how
Yeah,
that would
and that was also
the
discussed.
continuing relationship?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that was also discussed by past councils as well, was if there was any waters that weren't being utilized or didn't need to be used, and we used our wells, whatever we were not using, we could continue to sell to Tracy.
Okay. And so we do still need to allocate this to our taxes, though. We still have to go through the tax study, though, and all
If
of
we
that,
have
the
to
fee
pool a
study.
loan for additional monies and we're not granted it, we would probably have to go through another rate study to make sure that we're able to collect to fund a loan.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of different things from various people as far as like, this is gonna affect our rates and all this kind of, different concerns from constituents. And I'm just curious if you could clear it up, exactly how this would potentially affect rates besides the rate change that's already there.
So, we did our last rate study, was it 2019?
I think we're due up for one for this fiscal year.
And they're good for 5 years. And so that rate study does take SSJID project into consideration. However, I don't know where things are gonna be when we're up for that rate increase. We typically do rate increases every 5 to 10 years. Or that's what the standard is, general practice. This Escalon's getting better at doing that. For a while, we weren't doing increases every so many years. And we're starting to keep that on track because we need to collect certain revenues to be able to maintain and upgrade systems and to make improvements to things. So we will end up doing a rate study if needed. If we see that there is a huge need for it, or we're not collecting the monies that are needed to maintain systems, we'll end up doing a rate study. Or if we need to obtain a loan from anybody, typically the state is where we pull loans, they'll require it, and we'll have to go through that whole process to prove to them that we can collect those monies.
So that rate study may potentially involve this project, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, so the price on this option C that's recommended, we're saying is about 6 million. And what we were saying with option B is that it's about $1 million more for that half, so that would put it as at 7.
7 million.
If that was the option B, was the 7 with the $500,000
That's correct.
gallon tank.
But if Tracy wants to buy more water,
Right.
Yeah.
does it make sense to spend the extra $1 million and sell that extra water off to Tracy and have them pay for the tank? I don't know.
And they're doing a lot of growing, and that's why they want the water as much. They have a lot of housing development going on, and so they are in need of additional water.
How much will that tank impact the flow that's coming into the city? The size of that tank?
As it's designed, right now, the tank is designed to be able to accommodate the current need in the model. And build out to, or not complete build out, but additional, do you remember what the horizon date was on the study? There's a horizon date, I can get it for you. I just don't know what it is. It includes future demand.
It does seem pertinent, right? Yeah, because we do want to plan for the town. We don't want to leave them high and dry and have to do this again in, 20 years.
Yeah, and if you read the fine print of the previous report, you'll actually see that they did a comparison of what the projected growth was compared to the actual growth, and the projected growth was much higher than the actual growth, just because of the low growth initiative that exists here.
So just for a design question with the option C that we have, obviously, we're not going to be using all of our water allotment, shall we say. Is this plan designed to be able to handle the flow of our full allotment, should we ever get to that point, without any increased pumps, size of a tank, any other infrastructure, if you will? Will it handle the full flow of our full allotment?
So the answer is not in the short term. That's one of the reasons why alternative C became a kind of a Goldilocks version, is it's not full build out with a 500,000 gallon tank that provides the capacity for the full allotment. It is something smaller than that. However, the production of the existing wells and the existing system doesn't seem to demand even close to the 500,000 at the moment.
That's the option
Is-
for the tank at a later date.
The Plan C allows for an option of an upsized tank.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just trying to look forward, thinking 2-3 decades along the line of, okay, now that the town's actually growing a sizable amount,
Right.
or however long it takes us to get there, what is the downstream effect of our decision today
Right.
going to cost future citizens by not doing something today for X amount of dollars, and 4 decades, it's going to cost us a small fortune.
Right, and building in that extra capacity at the park is still a possibility with a bigger tank. You just,
With option C, we can,
you can upsize it.
okay.
And that was also taken into consideration with our past consultant that wrote that report, as well as the council. Was the council at that time making it very strict with our consultant at that time? We don't want to put any additional burden on our taxpayers unless it's absolutely necessary. And that's why option C was recommended, because that will get us through short term, however long that takes. And then in the future, if we need to expand capacity or hold additional water, we can always add that tank.
So can we go to the timeline slide? That one. So you'll be about 30% complete with design in July. So as you're thinking that the time frame from July of '23 to April of '24 would allow time for city staff to work with SSJID to obtain those grants? Is that why, what you're thinking in that time frame?
This timeframe doesn't take into account any of the funding restrictions. This is about as fast as we think we can get it done.
Okay.
However, if the plans are approved, we have encroachment permits, we have right-of-way, it can sit on the shelf, ready for funding, and when it becomes available, then it can go out to bid and move the project forward.
Okay, I mean, obviously you don't have the money, so we can't begin work right now. I'm just wondering if there is a common sense design-build approach to this project where, or not necessarily design-build, but more so design assist, that we could work with a contractor to try to finalize the design, but we don't want to get into a design assist contract and then the contractor, and we don't have the money to start the construction either. So,
Yeah, so I appreciate the alternative delivery idea. I've been doing alternative delivery, including design build, design sequencing, and others since 1993. And we generally do it when we're trying to shift one of two things. We either shift a schedule concern that we need it done faster than a normal linear process will do it, right? We've got to run parallel, and in that process, we shift the burden of the schedule off to the contractor and the contractor's design engineer to be able to produce a package and get it constructed very, very quickly. The other is generally to shift risk that we don't want to take as a public agency. There's some unknown in this thing. There's some major challenge in here that we're willing to shift the risk off to the contractor, and the contractor then can pick up that risk, price it into the project, and then manage that risk throughout the construction. Generally speaking, I would say I've been on a lot of design builds. I've never been on a single design build that actually saved money. It saves time and adjusts risks, generally speaking. I'm not saying that a contractor wouldn't have some really great ideas. They normally do. Really great ideas. So in this particular case, just because of the funding concern, to be able to shift the risk of a schedule, it actually increases the risk for the contractor because he ends up biting off more than maybe he can chew because you can't guarantee he'll get paid.
I'm just trying to, so I'm in construction as well, and so I just, frankly speaking, I'm trying to think of an alternative delivery method to get away from the typical design bid build, lowball contractor, you know, because then it just becomes a battle.
Yeah, I can absolutely appreciate the focus.
I think, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt anybody, but I think we really should see about how much we would generate in revenue if we sold extra water to Tracy. And
Yeah, and unfortunately Dominique is not here yet, so.
Hopefully it's
You
being,
heard it before, but
hopefully it's being recorded.
I think a certain amount that's already planned, if I recall correctly.
But I guess what I'm saying is if we're selling enough off to Tracy to justify a bigger tank, does it make sense to put in a bigger tank? Because we would be basically paying off the bigger tank for the long term by selling off that extra water to the city of Tracy.
I think the revenue, though, from that extra sell-off is worked into the schedule to make us pay for Plan C, because we knew we weren't going to use all the revenue. I guess that's the question. We know we're going to sell some of the water to Ripon. I was under the impression that monies that we would reduce the amount coming in, but it was still applied to this project to pay for the now $6 million, thanks to the 25% inflation cost the last 18 to 24 months. Thanks.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sir, are you saying?
I'm the messenger.
I'm sorry, Tracy.
Are you saying basically that our aquifer, it's my understanding that our aquifer is, you know, have to be like the Dust Bowl around here before we ran out of water? I mean, we're pretty much the deepest, one of the deepest areas, right?
Yeah, so the aquifer in this basin are in overdraft. That's the fact of it. So whether or not you guys have a lot of water right now is almost irrelevant compared to what the demand is or what the requirement is for the sustainable groundwater.
I guess what I mean when you say overdraft, what's that mean?
We're pulling out more water than is going in.
What, I mean, are we talking 100 years? Are we talking 2 years and we're?
I don't think anybody can predict that at the moment, but what we can do is staff has records of the height of water in each of the wells, and it shows historic drop year over year.
Reason I ask that is because if we knew there was some rough predictability there, you could use that, whatever money comes in from the grants in combination with the money that I think Councilman Stroman's talking about, to the money that, from the water that we're not currently using in the town, to sell off to then pay back the loan. I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, so
Something like that.
let's say, this is totally hypothetical, I'm just thinking of basic numbers. Let's say we're planning, so the smaller tank you said was 100,000 gallons, correct?
That's right.
That's based off of our demand and what would be cost effective for this project.
Right.
So City of Escalon, we need a 100,000 gallon tank. Well, Tracy's going like crazy, and Tracy says, City of Escalon, we need an additional 400,000 gallons of water. Can you sell it to us? Then it would, in my opinion, I don't know what we sell them water to them, but there we've just justified upsizing the size of the tank from a 100,000 gallon to a 500,000 gallon tank, sell that extra $400,000 off to the city of Tracy to pay back the cost of the increased size of the tank. I don't know if it would pencil out, but you're looking long-term as opposed to just, and obviously we can't increase the cost of the project exponentially that it affects our residents.
Right.
But if there is a cost-benefit analysis done that looking at a larger tank in order to sell off a larger capacity of water, that actually helps us with a long-term vision as opposed to just.
We don't need the tank to help
Right.
Tracy get the water.
Right, so
We don't
I think,
need to collect the water in our town and then deliver it to them. It continues going down the SSJ connection, so the tank is irrelevant to us on our ability to sell to Tracy.
right.
It doesn't have to come here and then go there.
It can just go straight there?
It just keeps on going there like it does now.
Yeah, it does,
Like
yeah,
it
it
does now,
does
so
now. It
there's
goes
no
off
reason.
of the
The tank
48-inch
doesn't help us
transmission
sell
line.
the water to them, we're already doing that.
I'm looking at more at like paying for the actual project.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess, I thought that money was already penciled in as continuing to come in to pay for this project. When we do connect and are using a portion of that money, or the portion of the water, the continued payments we're receiving from Tracy will continue to buy down the cost of this project until it's paid for, so we can maintain a reasonable water bill for our citizens.
If there's no need for water use and we're able to continue to sell it to Tracy, then yeah, we would be collecting those monies and putting it back towards paying off whatever we owe on this project.
Do you think we would ever get into a position where we would abandon or mothball, for the lack of a better term, the well system and rely on this system?
I think that with the slow growth that you currently have, I think that the well system you currently have is going to be with us for a long time. However, the health of the aquifer is not getting any better. So sooner or later, you'll end up, I think, completely on surface water, but that's in my view, it's not in the next 5 years, it's not in the next 10 years. It's well off into the future.
Because we hear, wells are getting deeper and.
They are.
And so it's nice to have that alternative because we don't want to ever end up in a situation where we don't have water.
That's correct. And that's one of the reasons why we have the Sustainable Groundwater Act, right, is because there's a realization that the aquifer is being depleted. And there has to be an alternative to be able to deliver water to local jurisdictions, to you and me, to be able to drink water and farm. And that's what this process is about, right? We're taking surface water off of the reservoir and putting it into the local city system in lieu of drawing more water out of the wells. And that's what the plan is about.
Sure would be nice, though, for us to be able to hold on to water instead of sending it to other places, but I digress.
That's a conversation for a different night.
Yeah.
And then when we're pulling in the mixture, so, we're pulling in the water from the surface water, and then we're also using the well water. Whose decision is it on like a daily basis on the percentage that we're actually using from the surface water mixed with the well water? Does that come down to numbers, or what does that come down to, or who's making that decision?
The city operations staff will be making that decision. They operate and maintain the existing city water system in which they're responsible to deliver high-quality water. So as soon as they start to realize they either have no volume or not enough volume, or they have constituents of the water that cannot be delivered because it's unsafe, then they're blending in more surface water in order to charge the local city system. And it's a matter of calling SSJID and saying, I need more water, and for them to adjust the flow control facility for us to get more water.
So it's our staff
That's exactly right.
our staff.
Is there a
I was going
difference?
to say that, but I referred to him just in case. But I was thinking of the staff, yeah.
Is there a difference in the quality of the water, the wells versus the surface water?
Yeah, the surface water quality is much better than the well water.
It's treated clean, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
It's already treated and taken care of.
Yeah, and they're actually getting ready to do an expansion at the SSJID water facility or the water plant to add more treated water capacity. So it's a good thing for everyone.
And make a request?
Sure.
I appreciate you taking the time and explaining this to us. It would probably be helpful, obviously it would have to be a public meeting, but I think it would be helpful if this council went to SSJID's plant and took a tour and saw the entire system, so that, because obviously this is a pretty sensitive topic, it's coming down the pike, and I can't speak for the other four, but people are talking about it now, and people want to know about it, and so I think the more we can become educated and put our eyes on it, the better off we all are.
They have been very accommodating, and they are very proud of their plant. They love people walking through. If you would like a tour, we can arrange a tour.
I can go ahead and follow up with you guys on tours.
Okay.
Any other questions for these folks? I'm good.
I'm fine.
I guess let me ask anybody out there in the public, since we've got you here and we've got a trapped audience here. Anybody in the audience got any questions we want to dig in a little bit more on any topic?
How big is the pipeline coming from?
18 inches. Well, it's 48 inches in Dodds, and then 18 inches coming back.
Maximum size to be?
So they recommended a series of sizes based on how far the pipeline went and how much additional head we needed in the system. So the 16 or the 18-inch pipeline is like the Goldilocks pipeline. They looked at all the way up to 24 inches. The challenge with 24 inches is to be able to deliver, or to be able to turn over the pipe enough and take all of the water that's required to do that in the current configuration. You just don't have the demand for it. And then what you end up with is a stagnant pipe and a whole bunch of testing and potential failures of that testing, and that pushes your water supply.
That was a question 2 years ago that is the pipeline diameter enough to deliver 2,100 acre feet a year?
I have to double check, but we can look at the number.
Because that's our allotment, 2,100 acre feet. Pipeline that you showed here, is that underground?
Yes.
Flow control going to be underground?
Yes. No, so at the flow control facility, I hate to talk with my back to you, but I just want everyone to hear. The flow control facility is a sort of a 15 by 25 foot fenced area. That fenced area has something that protrudes above the ground. The fence has an antenna. That antenna then sends signals back to SSJID so they can control the valve from SSJID. And it will also have an emergency generator facility, and then it will have 2 large vaults in which the valves are planted in the vaults in the ground.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I would like to address the overdraft. During the presentation 3 years ago, we were taking, I think, 78, 100 overdraft-wise, and the flow from surface water will actually let us reduce that overdraft. We'll get credit for that, because at some point, people that overdrafted are going to pay a fine.
That's right.
That's something you need to know when you talk about overdraft. Funding. Years ago, we met with one of the regarding financing. Has anybody gone back to SSJID, asked them for a no or low interest loan so that we can take those grants? That will know faster.
Yeah, part of our conversation with SSJID is an entire funding scheme. How best can we do this without dramatically impacting the city, the residents themselves, and being able to guarantee the delivery of the water? I don't know right now if anybody knows all of the details enough to be able to come up with a coherent plan, but we should have a coherent plan here very soon, like summertime.
Is there a date where we're going to be able to see all this information?
Yeah, it'll be available to staff, it should be in June. And the reason I put July up here was because I knew that staff was going to have some time to review and provide us comments and things like that. So absolutely.
So are there any other municipalities or any of our neighbors looking at a similar type project? Or are we kind of the lone wolf?
No, most of the other communities have already done it. Manteca, Tracy, Lathrop, Modesto, they're all taking water. And
so we're late to the prom, basically.
I don't know whether or not you're late to the prom or your dance card is full now.
Okay. I just wondering if, in speaking, so I've had a conversation with Congressman Harder's office, and they've explained to me that they understand the need for federal funding and things of that nature, but typically when you go to the federal level, they look more of a regional help, not little old Escalon and our surface water project. And so I was wondering if there was anybody else that was doing a similar project that city council, along with this city council and some other people in our neighborhood and the greater area, we can lobby Congressman Harder to say, look, Escalon has a surface water project, this city has this project, and work together to try to get some of those federal funds here.
Yeah, I am actually encouraged by SSGID's participation in their offer for grants, because a lot of the grants that we're seeing now are for more rural and more disadvantaged communities, and they weight the scoring for the grants higher for those particular factors. So while it may feel a little bit like you're a small community and small fish in a big pond, you actually might end up with a more favorable decision with a grant because of that.
Also, because we're a member of a groundwater sustainability group and we have a plan, you can apply as a partnership through your plan. And so I've talked to SSJID staff about that as well, like trying to apply for this funding for a grant through our groundwater sustainability plan, which we're going to be updating probably in the next year or so. It's required to be updated every 5 years. And in that plan, we're members with SSJID and the city of Ripon. And so that is considered partnership, regional, and it was our two small cities that came together with SSJID, and that was because we were smaller, with a smaller utility agency, so.
What's the shelf life on your plan?
So based on the growth of the community, our shelf life is going to be probably 5 to 7 years. Nothing dramatic will change except for some of the technology at the SCADA facility or some of the valving. I don't know, but I can find out.
Staff, can I make I'm sorry.
We looked at in the past, major factors going on. One right now, even well one has such high nitrates, it has to be mixed.
Another issue is the state continuously increases the standards of water, which you might think is good, and in a way it is, but one is cutting off more and more of our well water supply, and in my opinion, part of that, raising the standards, is that everyone often mandate we go to surface water.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yes.
I wanted to thank you for this presentation. Staff, could you please make sure this gets emailed out to council members?
I typically post it on the website, but I can email it to you as well.
So thank you for this presentation.
You're welcome.
Secondly, I really appreciate SSJID and their willingness to partner with us. I mentioned a utility earlier that will remain nameless, that it's been my experience that they're the 100% complete opposite working with people. But I digress. But most importantly, I really want to thank Gary and Kurt and Ed for your feedback as well, because it's important that we get input from the community as well. And so thanks for sharing your thoughts, because we're here to make the best decision for everyone, and I appreciate all three of you speaking up and asking those questions, and hopefully we can do another meeting like this and invite more people to attend, because it affects every single member of this community. That's it.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, as this is a special meeting, I noticed on our agenda we don't have council communications or anything, so we can just move right to adjournment, so.
I just wanted to remind you that the appointments will be on the next meeting for Monday night. And yes, that's all I have.
All right, well, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Oh, Mr.
One more comment. Since you guys put this off, my meeting would be going to closed session.
Correct.
So those who don't know, please look up the concerned meeting section.
Thank you, Gary. Staff, can we bring this to closed session?
I will have to double check. I would say no, because I believe actions related to appointments have to all be in open session in the public, before the
I believe
public.
I had asked that
I can
question.
definitely double check, and if that's the
that's true.
case, I can ask that it be put on. But the State Brown Act is very specific. I believe there's only 8 or 9 items, and I don't believe commission appointments is one of them. But I can double check with our attorney, but I'm very confident that everything has to be done in an open public meeting.
All right.
Check for us, please.
With that, I want to thank everybody who came out and spoke tonight, and we will see those returning on next Monday. Thank you so much. This meeting's adjourned.